There is a very particular feeling, and I want you to find it in yourself because you have felt it, and so have I. It is the feeling of everyone finally agreeing. A person has been singled out, maybe at work, maybe in your family, maybe some stranger whose name is trending today for something they said or did, and the group closes ranks against them. And there is this warmth to it, this clean, satisfying sense of solidarity. We are all on the same side now. We can all see at last who the problem is. People who were at each other's throats an hour ago are suddenly united, nodding along, adding their piece. And it feels good. It feels like clarity. It feels more than anything like justice. I want you to hold on to how good that feels because it is the most important clue in everything I am about to tell you. That warm rush of righteous agreement, when a crowd turns as one against a single target, is not a sign that you are right. It is the sensation produced by the oldest and most dangerous machine in human history. A machine that has been running inside human groups since before we had writing, since before we had cities, and it is running right now inside you. A French thinker named Rene Girard spent his life exposing exactly how it works. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it, and you will never quite trust a mob again, especially when the mob is agreeing with you. To understand the machine, you have to start with why human groups get into trouble in the first place. And Girard's answer begins with something simple and strange about desire. We like to think we want things for our own private reasons. Girard argued the opposite. We learn what to want by watching each other. Desire is contagious. You want the thing because someone else wants it, and they want it partly because you do, and that copying multiplied across a whole community has a dangerous side effect. It means we are constantly converging on the same objects, the same status, the same positions, and so we are constantly becoming each other's rivals. And rivalry, like desire, is contagious too. A conflict between two people pulls in others, spreads, escalates, until the tension is not between two rivals but running through the entire group like a fever. Girard called this a mimetic crisis. Picture a community coming apart, old resentments boiling over everyone against everyone, accusations flying in every direction, the normal order dissolving into a war of all against all. This is the moment a society can genuinely destroy itself, tear itself to pieces from the inside. And here is the problem the human animal faced over and over for hundreds of thousands of years. When a group reaches that boiling point, when the violence is about to consume everyone, how does it pull back from the edge? How does a community on the verge of tearing itself apart suddenly find peace? The answer Girard uncovered is chilling in its simplicity. It does not find peace by solving the actual problem. It finds peace by finding a victim. Here is how the machine works. At the peak of the crisis, when the whole community is a storm of all against all, the violence suddenly spontaneously finds a single point to discharge it. All that scattered hostility converges, as if by instinct, onto one person or one small group, usually someone already at the edge. An outsider, a stranger, someone marked as different, someone who looks wrong, believes wrong came from elsewhere, someone weak enough that they cannot fight back and no one will avenge them. And the war of all against all becomes in an instant the war of all against one. And the moment that happens, something extraordinary occurs. The tension breaks. All that free floating rage, which had no single target and was about to destroy everyone, now has one target and it pours out onto the victim and it is spent. The community that was moments from self destruction is suddenly miraculously united. The people who hated each other now stand shoulder to shoulder, joined by their shared enemy, their shared act. The fever breaks, calm returns, and the group feels something like relief, like cleansing. like grace. They feel deeply that they have done the right thing because look, the chaos has ended. Peace has come, and it came the moment they turned on that person. So that person surely must have been the cause of all of it. That is the lie at the heart of everything. The scapegoat did not cause the crisis. The crisis came from inside the group, from its own rivalries and its own contagious violence. The victim was very nearly chosen at random for the crime of being available. But because expelling them genuinely made everyone feel better, because the peace that followed was real, the human mind draws the false and fatal conclusion. They felt bad. They punished this person. They felt good. Therefore, this person was the source of the badness. The relief becomes the proof. And this is why we never learn, because the machine works. It really does deliver peace. It just delivers it by charging the entire cost to an innocent. And Girard argued this is not ancient history. This is the hidden foundation of human culture itself. He believed that our myths, our rituals, our oldest ideas of the sacred all grew out of these forgotten murders. Think about how strange it is that so many ancient gods and mythic figures are both cursed and holy, both the monster who brought the plague and the divine being whose death saved the people. Oedipus is a perfect example. He walks with a limp. He is an outsider. He is accused of the crimes that unleashed a plague on his city, incest, and the murder of his father, and he must be expelled to restore order. Guilty, deformed, foreign, cast out for the good of all. Girard read that story and saw not a myth but a memory. A real scapegoating retold from the point of view of the persecutors, so smoothly that for thousands of years we mistook the propaganda of a lynch mob for a tragedy about fate. And this, Girard argued, is where sacrifice itself comes from. The strange bloody rituals at the root of almost every archaic religion. Once a community had discovered by accident that killing a victim released the tension and restored the peace, they would want to repeat it deliberately before the crisis returned. But they could not simply keep murdering their own neighbors, or the cycle of vengeance would start again. So they found substitutes. An animal, a prisoner, a stranger, someone or something outside the web of relationships that could be killed without anyone demanding revenge. And they performed the killing as a solemn rite, at an altar, with priests telling themselves a god required it. Sacrifice, in Girard's reading, is the scapegoat mechanism domesticated, the founding murder restaged on purpose again and again to bleed off the community's accumulating violence in a controlled dose before it could explode on its own. The altar is where we industrialized the thing we could not stop doing, because that is the genius and the horror of the mechanism. It hides itself. The people running it never experience it as murder. They experience it as justice, as necessity, as the gods demanding it. They genuinely believe the victim is guilty, and they write the story down that way, from the inside, so that everyone who reads it after will also believe the victim had it coming. We cannot see the machine because we are almost always standing inside the story it wrote. So let me show it to you running in the full light of history, in a case we can actually check. The year is 1348. A plague is moving across Europe, the Black Death, and it is killing on a scale that is difficult to imagine, perhaps a third of the entire continent. Whole villages gone, bodies in the streets, and no one has the faintest idea what is causing it. There is no germ theory. There is only terror and helplessness and grief with nowhere to go. And into that unbearable vacuum comes a story. The Jews have done it. They have poisoned the wells. They are the cause. It was false. It was completely provably false. The Pope himself, Clement VI, issued formal declarations pointing out the obvious. that Jews were dying of the plague in exactly the same numbers as everyone else, that the plague raged in places where no Jews lived at all, that the accusation made no sense. It didn't matter, because the accusation was not answering a question about disease. It was answering a scream. It gave the horror a face. It converted an unbearable causeless helplessness into something a terrified population could actually do something about. And so they did. In town after town, Jewish communities were rounded up and slaughtered. In Strasbourg, in February of 1349, around 2,000 Jews were burned to death in a single day. And here is the detail that should end any doubt about what was really happening. The plague had not even reached Strasbourg yet. They killed the scapegoat to stop a disaster that had not arrived and would arrive anyway, because the killing was never really about the plague. It was about the intolerable feeling of having no one to blame. By the time it burned out, hundreds of Jewish communities across Europe had been destroyed. Girard actually opened his book on all this, The Scapegoat, with a text from this exact period. A medieval poet named Guillaume de Machaut wrote an account of the plague years that tells the well poisoning story completely straight, fully believing it, describing the killing of the Jews as a just response to their crime. And Girard's insight was this: Machaut is not lying, not in the way a cynical propagandist lies. He sincerely believes every word he writes. And that sincerity is exactly what makes it a text of persecution, a document written from inside the mechanism by someone who cannot see it, who has mistaken a massacre for justice. And once Girard learned to recognize the fingerprints of that sincerity, the telltale signs, the outsider blamed the impossible crime, the crisis, the collective violence, he started seeing them everywhere. In myths, in legends, in the sacred stories at the root of nearly every human culture. All of them, he suspected, written by the persecutors hiding a real victim. But then Girard noticed something that genuinely startled him. And this is his most striking and most debated claim. And I want to present it as what it is: his interpretation, not settled fact. He noticed that a few texts in human history do the opposite. They tell the scapegoating story, the crisis, the mob, the single victim, the execution that restores order, but they tell it from the side of the victim, and they insist against the entire crowd that the victim is innocent. He found this above all in the Bible, in the Hebrew prophets, in the figure of the suffering servant who is despised and struck down while the text declares he did nothing wrong. And most completely, he argued in the Gospels, in the story of the crucifixion. Look at its structure, Girard said. A community in crisis. A mob that swells until it is unanimous. A single victim, an outsider figure condemned to die so that peace and order can be restored. One man dying for the people. It is the scapegoat mechanism, exactly in every mechanical detail. Except this time the story is told so that you cannot possibly miss the innocence of the victim and cannot possibly side with the crowd. For the first time, the machine is shown from the outside, exposed, its central lie broken open. Whatever you believe about the religion, Girard's cultural point is hard to shake. Something in our civilization slowly learned from stories like these to distrust the unanimous crowd and to instinctively suspect that the one everyone is pointing at might be the innocent one. We were over long centuries handed the decoder ring for our own oldest trick. But here is the part that should unsettle you and keep you honest. Because being handed the decoder ring did not free us from the machine, it just made the machine change its costume. We do not burn people in the town square anymore. We have learned to be ashamed of the old, obvious versions. But the mechanism itself, the deep human reflex to convert unbearable tension into a single blamed victim, is exactly as strong as it ever was. And it still feels from the inside precisely like justice. Watch it happen now. Watch the online pile-on. where a single person is selected, sometimes for something real and sometimes for almost nothing, and made to carry the concentrated fury of thousands until destroying them becomes a shared project that makes strangers feel briefly, warmly united. Watch the political version where a whole complicated national misery, economic pain, fear, loss of status gets pinned onto a single group. The immigrants, the elites, the other party, the outsiders, offered up as the one cause that, if only removed, would fix everything. Watch the moral panic, the villain of the week, the exhilarating clarity of a shared enemy. And watch above all the tell. The tell is always the same. It is that feeling we started with, the sudden unanimity, the intoxicating sense that everyone worth listening to now agrees. The way turning on the target dissolves your differences with people you were arguing with yesterday. That warm, clean, energizing rush of righteous solidarity against a villain is not evidence that you have found a real culprit. It is the exact sensation the mechanism has always produced in order to hide itself from the people it is using. It felt like justice to the crowd at Strasbourg. It felt like justice to every mob that ever formed. It has always felt like justice from the inside. That feeling is not the proof. That feeling is the warning. So, what do you do knowing this? You cannot delete the reflex. It is old, older than reason, wired deep. But you can learn to recognize the feeling and treat it not as a green light but as a red one. You can train yourself so that the very moment you feel that clean certainty, that a single person or group is the whole problem, and that punishing them will make everything right again, is the moment a quiet alarm goes off and you ask the questions the mechanism does not want you to ask. Is this person actually the cause of the problem or just the available target for the pain? Am I thinking right now or am I joining? Would I still believe this if I was standing next to the accused instead of inside the crowd? And there is one move Girard's whole history suggests that jams the machine, and it is deceptively small. It is to look at the victim, to refuse to let them stay a symbol, an abstraction, a villain, and instead to see the actual face, the actual person, the possibility of their innocence. The mechanism runs on unanimity. It needs everyone, and that means it can be broken by one. One voice that steps out of the perfect agreement and says quietly, wait. Are we sure? Look again. It only takes a single person refusing to throw the stone to put a crack in the whole thing and let a little doubt and a little mercy back into the world. Because the need to blame is really the need to make a bearable story out of an unbearable world. When we are frightened and helpless and in pain, the hardest thing to sit with is that there may be no villain, no single cause, no one to punish, just a hard and complicated reality with no clean enemy in it. Finding someone to blame converts that helplessness into action, that chaos into a story, that unbearable feeling into a target. It is one of the most human things we do, and it has left a trail of innocent bodies across the whole of human history. You are going to feel it again. Soon, probably. That heat, that certainty, that delicious pull to join the crowd closing in on someone. And when you do, I hope you remember that the feeling has lied to every generation that ever felt it. The world has never suffered from a shortage of villains of the week. What it has always been starving for is the rarer thing. The person who feels the pull of the mob and the warmth of the agreement and the sweetness of the shared enemy, and who steps back anyway and says this person is not the reason for all of it. Put down the stone. Look again. Be that person, even when the crowd is loud, even when the crowd is right, that something is wrong, especially when the crowd is inside your own head. If this is the kind of thing you want to keep thinking about, I have written 2 books that go deeper: The Shadow You Carry, about the parts of yourself you disown and then meet again in the people you condemn, and On Wanting, about why we chase what we chase and how our desires are never as private as they feel. The links are in the description whenever you are ready.